Where are Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell now? Inside their lives. Years after horrific Doomsday murders, Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell were convicted of killing her children and his ex-wife in a bizarre Doomsday plot. Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell alleged that they were eradicating zombies and demons, when in actuality, they killed her children and his ex-wife in a trio of slayings dubbed the Doomsday Murders. After meeting in October 2018, Lori and Chad believed they were chosen to survive Armageddon and do missionary work on Earth after Jesus Christ's second coming. He allegedly convinced her that her kids had dark spirits and needed to die. Less than a year later, Lori's 16-year-old daughter, Tylee, was last seen on September 8, 2019, while her 7-year-old son, Joshua J.J. Vallow, disappeared shortly after on September 22. The following month, Chad's first wife of 30 years, Tammy Daybell, suddenly died under suspicious circumstances that same October. When family members alerted the authorities that Tylee and JJ had gone missing, Lori and Chad took off to Hawaii, where they were eventually arrested on February 20, 2020. Ultimately, the children's bodies were found on Chad's property on June 9th. And despite the mounting evidence, Lori and Chad maintained their innocence in the cases. 3 years later, Lori was convicted in May 2023 of killing her daughter Tylee and son JJ and conspiring to kill Tammy. She received 3 consecutive life sentences. At the same time, Chad was charged with first-degree murder for Tylee, JJ, and Tammy, in addition to fraud charges. A jury in Idaho found him guilty on all charges, and he's currently on death row in the state. Today, Lori is preparing to represent herself in court for separate charges in Arizona, and she spoke to Dateline about why she believes she and Chad will be exonerated. "I have seen things in the future that Jesus showed me when I was in heaven," Lori said on the show. So where are Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell now? Here's everything to know about their crimes and lives today. Who are Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell? Chad Daybell, Lori Vallow. Rexburg Police Department. Madison County Sheriff's Office AP Shutterstock Lori Vallow was born Lori Noreen Cox on June 26, 1973 in San Bernardino, Calif. She has been married 5 times. She wed her first husband, high school sweetheart Nelson Yanes, in 1992 when she was 19 years old, and their relationship ended in divorce, the East Idaho News reported. 3 years later, she married her second husband, William LaGioia, with whom she shares a son named Colby Ryan. She and LaGioia divorced in 1996. Lori married her third husband, Joseph Ryan, and they welcomed a daughter, Tylee, in 2001. They divorced in 2004, and Ryan died of a heart attack in 2018. In 2005, Lori married her fourth husband, Charles Vallow. Together, they adopted his grandnephew, JJ Vallow, who was diagnosed with autism, per the Associated Press. Charles also had 2 children from his previous marriage to Cheryl Wheeler. Chad was married to Tammy Daybell when he and Lori first met, at an October 2018 conference in Utah. Still, Chad and Lori had an immediate attraction to each other and began having an affair. Melanie Gibb, a former friend of Lori's, later said in court, "She shared with me that he told her that they had been married in another time period." She did believe that. Gibb also recalled Lori saying that she and Chad were destined to lead a group of 144,000 people who would remain on Earth after the apocalypse and the return of Jesus Christ. Lori had Chad evaluate her children's spirits to determine if they were possessed by demons. She later stated that Tylee and JJ were zombies, and that she and Chad were on a mission to eradicate zombies before the second coming of Jesus Christ. The term zombie refers to an individual whose mortal spirit has left their body, and that their body is now the host of another spirit. Rexburg Police Lieutenant Ron Ball wrote in an affidavit obtained by People. The new spirit in a zombie is always considered a dark spirit. What did Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell do? In this aerial photo, Investigators search for human remains at Chad Daybell's residence on June 9, 2020, in Salem, Idaho. John Rourke, the Idaho Post-Register via AP Charles, filed to divorce Lori in February 2019 after she abandoned him and JJ for 58 days, according to the Post-Register. Charles claimed her religious beliefs were a cause of conflict in their marriage, and he also alleged that she stole $35,000 from a joint bank account they shared. That July, Lori's brother, Alex Cox, shot and killed Charles in Lori's Arizona house, claiming self-defense. Cox was never charged with a crime related to the incident. He later died from blood clots in his lungs and high blood pressure that same December, according to the East Idaho News. In August 2019, Lori and Chad moved to Rexburg, Idaho, and their relationship only intensified. Shortly after their move, Tylee was last seen on September 8, 2019, in Yellowstone National Park, and JJ was spotted for the last time on September 22, 2019. The following month, Chad said that his first wife, Tammy, went to bed with a cough and died in her sleep. No autopsy was performed after Chad declined, and she was buried within days, per KSL TV. 2 weeks later, Chad and Tammy married in Hawaii on November 5, 2019. Around this time, JJ's grandparents, Larry and Kay Woodcock, called for a welfare check on JJ and Tylee, and police came to her home in Idaho on November 26, 2019. According to the Post-Register, when authorities spoke with Lori, she told different stories about where her children were. After they couldn't confirm Lori's statements, the police returned to the residence the next day with a search warrant, but found the home had been abruptly vacated. Tylee and JJ were officially declared missing on Dexter 20, 2019. The Woodcocks, Chad's brother Matt, and Lori's son Colby Ryan, released messages urging Lori and Chad to turn the children over to child services. The next month, they offered a $20,000 reward for their safe return or information surrounding the children's disappearances. Police found Lori and Chad in Kauai, Hawaii, on June 25, 2020. They served Lori with a legal document ordering her to produce the kids, per ABC. What were Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell's criminal charges? Lori Vallow, JJ Vallow, Tylee Ryan, Tammy Daybell, Chad Daybell. In early February 2020, police tracked down a storage unit in Rexburg, Idaho, full of Tylee and JJ's belongings, with video footage showing Lori and Cox filling it up before she left for Hawaii, the East Idaho News reported. A few weeks later, she was arrested in Kauai on February 20 and extradited to Idaho, where she was charged with non-support of dependent children and several other offenses, per a press release. Her bail was initially set at $5 million and later reduced to $1 million, but she remained in police custody. Police found JJ and Tylee's remains on Chad's property on June 9, 2020. The Independent reported that Chad called Lori in jail and informed her of the search. That December, police declared Tammy Daybell's death suspicious, and her body was exhumed for an autopsy, per KSL TV. It was determined that she actually died of asphyxiation. Following the discovery of Tylee and JJ's bodies, Lori and Chad were each charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of conspiracy to commit destruction, alteration or concealment of evidence, and 3 counts of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder for the slayings of Tylee, JJ, and Tammy. Lori was also charged with conspiracy to commit murder in Arizona for Charles Vallow's death, plus grand theft for collecting Tylee and JJ's Social Security survivor benefits after their deaths. Chad faced an additional first-degree murder charge for killing Tammy, in addition to 2 counts of insurance fraud in relation to a life insurance policy he'd taken out on Tammy before her murder. They each pleaded not guilty to all charges. What was Lori Vallow's verdict? Lori Vallow Daybell listens as the jury's verdict is read at the Ada County Courthouse on May 12, 2023 in Boise, Idaho. Kyle Green, AP9, May 2023, a jury found Lori guilty of murdering Tylee and JJ and of conspiring to murder Tammy, as well as of grand theft. According to reports, Lori, who wore all black for the proceeding, appeared emotionless in court and didn't speak to her attorneys before exiting the courtroom with them. The trial lasted about 7 weeks, during which JJ's cause of death was revealed to be asphyxiation. A coroner testified that they were unable to determine Tylee's cause of death beyond it being a homicide because her remains were burnt and partially dismembered. Lori's eldest and only surviving son, Colby Ryan, testified that he never thought Lori would ever harm any of her children until she began her relationship with Chad. "My mom has spent her whole life protecting us kids. After she met Chad Daybell, she changed," he said. What was Lori Vallow's sentence? Lori Vallow appears in court in Lihue, Hawaii. Dennis Fujimoto, AP, Shutterstock Judge Stephen W. Boyce gave Lori 3 consecutive life sentences without chance of parole, 1 each for the murder and 1 for the conspiracy to murder Tylee, JJ, and Tammy, respectively. She also received a 10-year sentence for grand theft by deception, for collecting her children's Social Security survivor benefits after their deaths. At her sentencing on July 31, 2023, Lori told the court that Tylee, JJ, and Tammy visited her after their deaths and that JJ told her she did nothing wrong. Delivering his sentence, Judge Boyce told her that she hadn't shown any remorse for her heinous and egregious acts, adding, "You chose the most evil and destructive path possible. You justified all this by going down a bizarre religious rabbit hole, and clearly, you are still down there." What was Chad Daybell's sentence? Chad Daybell listens as the jury's verdict in his murder trial is read at the Ada County Courthouse on May 30, 2024 in Boise, Idaho. AP photo Kyle Greenon. May 30, 2024, after a nearly 2-month-long trial, it took an Ada County, Idaho, jury less than 6 hours of deliberations to find Chad guilty of all charges against him. During the trial, Chad's adult children, Emma Murray and Garth Daybell, testified in defense of their father, with Murray noting on the stand that Tammy's health had been declining in the weeks leading to her death. "I'd never seen him more upset than in that moment. I know the grief was real," she said, per 12 News. "He may not have had the same romantic relationship that he had with my mother in the past, but I know he valued her as a person, and seeing her die was very traumatic." After a recess, Judge Boyce announced that the jury agreed to sentence Chad to death for his crimes, telling the court, via CNN, that the panel found beyond a reasonable doubt that the aggravating circumstances when weighed against the mitigating circumstances do not make the imposition of the death penalty unjust. Are Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell still married? Lori and Chad are still legally married despite being incarcerated in different states. Where is Lori Vallow now? Lori Vallow Daybell mugshot. Madison County jail days. After her conviction for murdering her children and conspiring to murder Tammy, Lori was indicted on charges of conspiring to kill her niece's ex-husband, Brandon Boudreaux, stemming from a knee incident on February 24, 2022. Police in Gilbert, Arizona alleged that Cox, now deceased, conspired with Lori in October 2019 to kill Boudreaux while he was married to Lori's niece Melanie Pawlowski. It's not the only conspiracy to commit murder charge she faces in the state. Lori was also indicted in the shooting death of her ex-husband, Charles Vallow, at the home they shared in Chandler, Arizona. Lori has pleaded not guilty to all charges and appealed her convictions in the murders of Tylee and JJ and the conspiracy to murder Tammy. Lori began serving her life sentences at Pocatello Women's Correctional Center in Pocatello, Idaho, but was extradited to a Maricopa County, Arizona's jail while she awaits trial for the conspiracy charges in the Boudreaux and Charles Vallow cases. Initially slated to begin August 1, 2024, Lori's attorneys were granted a delay until February 24, 2025, with her lawyers citing an overwhelming amount of evidence to sort through before proceedings begin. That same December, Lori was ruled competent to stand trial and waived her right to an attorney, per 12 News. She's set to represent herself at her Arizona trial on March 31, 2025. Where is Chad Daybell now? Chad Daybell listens during his preliminary hearing on August 3, 2020, in St. Anthony, Idaho. John Rourke, Post-Register, Pool, AP Chad, entered a maximum security prison in Kuna, Idaho, on June 3, 2024, according to Idaho News 6. He is the 9th inmate on death row in the state, the East Idaho News reported. 2 days later, Chad filed to appeal both his conviction and his death sentence, which the East Idaho News reported can take several years. His legal team also filed a separate motion requesting a public defender be assigned to his case, citing indigence. On June 27, 2024, it was reported that the home where Chad killed Tammy, and where Tylee and JJ's remains were found in the yard, was up for sale. Chad's daughter and her family had been residing at the property since Chad's arrest. If you suspect child abuse, call the Child Help National Child Abuse Hotline at 1-800-4A-CHILD or 1-800-422-4453, or go to www.childhelp.org. All calls are toll-free and confidential. The hotline is available 24/7 in more than 170 languages.